What's up? I'm Dan Blewett. I'm a former pro pitcher, former baseball and softball academy owner. Today's video, let's talk about roster sizes in youth baseball and the amount of pitchers that you really need to have and develop if you want to be successful as a youth baseball team. All right, so again, today's video, we'll talk about the pitching roster you need to have on your team. And this does not matter if it's 9U or if it's 17U. I stand by this. Again, I own my own travel organization. I've seen the way this goes. And we're gonna go from three different angles here: arm health, team performance, and player development. So my overall thesis here is you need this many, 10 pitchers per team if you want to have a successful summer, again, at any level of amateur baseball. And the reason is, let's jump into team performance first. So say you only have 6 pitchers and the rest of the pitchers on your team say, oh, I don't want to pitch, I don't like pitching, or my son doesn't pitch, and you only have 6 arms. Well, it's very common in tournaments. I'm not surprising anyone with this. It's very common to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then a couple games on Sunday if you make it that far. So we're talking like up to 6 games in 3 days a lot of times, 4 days. That's a lot of baseball. And so just doing the math, 6 pitchers and 4 to 6 games, there's essentially no margin for error for one of those kids to implode and go 2 innings and have a bad game. And it's going to force you to start bringing back pitchers too quickly. So you're going to have guys who throw 4 or 5 innings on Thursday, throwing multiple innings again on Sunday, which, given the fact they're going to probably play the field on Friday and Saturday, is going to give them way too little rest for their arms in almost all cases. With 10 pitchers, from a team performance standpoint, it gives your squad room to fail, and it allows you to keep fresh arms on tap for the farther parts of the tournament, Saturday and Sunday games. But again, the biggest thing is, and everyone has seen this, you are gonna have youth pitchers implode. Even your good starters are sometimes gonna have an inning where they walk 3 in the first inning and they're at 33 pitches, and you can't leave them out there for 50 pitches in 1 inning or 45 pitches. They've got to get yanked. And this is one of the hard realities about baseball and keeping kids' arms healthy. If their inning grows beyond really like 30 pitches, at 25, you've got to have guys warming up, even if it's the first inning. At 30, there's a serious like, hey, if he can't get the next guy out, he's going to be done for the day. You can't let kids go 40 pitches in 1 inning. It's absolute no-no. It's not good. And so basically, you have to have players ready for these implosions. And it's really common for a kid to go 25 pitches in the first inning, 30 pitches in the second. Now they're at 55 pitches. They're not going to go deep. And your team's probably already losing at that point. So you have to have enough cushion to let your team have a couple implosions in any given situation. And not to mention, what happens if a kid just has a family event, has an arm injury, has an ankle injury, anything that prevents them from pitching? Now you're down to 5, maybe 4 pitchers, and you're really stuck, and you're gonna have to start to overuse kids, and you're gonna have to dip into arms who said they don't pitch, and they haven't been practicing to pitch. And that's my big key here, is that if you have 10 kids who are actively practicing their pitching, even if they're not great pitchers, you're setting yourself up to be a much more competent team and do well towards the end of a tournament. And here's a big way to see this. In the College World Series, every year you see really high caliber teams like UCLA, Auburn, Ole Miss, Miami, whoever, all these really high level teams. You see their seasons come down in the super regional or the regional to their like 9th best pitcher because they're out of arms towards the end of a regional or super regional. And so little Johnny, who's only pitched 11 innings all season for, University of Texas as an example, is suddenly in the game in the 8th inning in the deciding game of their entire season. It happens all the time. So you have to make sure you develop the last chunk of your bullpen if you want to be successful and win tournaments. Number 2, arm health. Again, the biggest thing is to protect your kids' arms so they're not going 5 innings on Friday and pitching 3 more innings on Saturday or Sunday. That wouldn't happen in pro baseball. It wouldn't happen in college baseball, but yet it happens quite often in amateur baseball. So if you are a coach who actually cares about the health of your players, they're going to be able to go maybe 2 innings on a Thursday or Friday and then come back for 1 to 2 innings later on maybe Sunday. But anyone who starts, they're going to be done for that tournament. And if you start a kid and they go 4 or 5 innings and they come back during that tournament, you're doing a bad job as a coach. That is not good for their arm. It just isn't. So realistically, your starters are going to get 1 time out there, even if they implode on the first or second inning. And so then you're going to have all these bullpen innings to eat up. And so from an arm health standpoint, it's really tough because kids are going to be playing in the field. If your kid plays shortstop all day Thursday, so you have 2 games, is he really going to do well pitching the next day? It's a lot of throwing. So it's a very difficult balancing act. And so trying to get kids on the bench where they can rest and then continue to shuffle kids in and out where they get their relief innings and their starting innings without overusing players and still having players who are fresh on late Saturday and Sunday is really, really difficult. This is why, again, you need 10 arms to make it through any of these tournaments, and sometimes more than that. So the realistic view is you have to train all of your kids to be competent pitchers. Last thing, player development. It is good for every kid to learn to pitch, even if they're definitely not going to be a pitcher long term. But here's the thing, you don't know this definitely. Oh, my kid wants to be a catcher. Oh, my kid wants to be an outfielder, doesn't like pitching. You just never know. And here's an example. In my academy, we had a kid who was in love with catching. And I said, hey, every year, I'm like, hey, man, you've got a pretty good arm. There's like 14U. Like, are you sure you don't want to learn, like spend a little bit of time in the winter with us, like learning how to pitch? He's like, no, I love catching, hate pitching. I'm going to be a catcher. Next year, I say the same thing. Nope, love catching, hate pitching. I'm going to be a catcher. His junior year or sophomore or junior year, one of the two, he was suddenly throwing like 85. Like he had a really good arm and not a very big kid either. And I was like, hey man, you throw really, really hard. Your high school coach is definitely going to pitch you. And you probably got some innings last year, didn't you? He's like, yeah, I did. And they made me pitch as a freshman. I'm like, so if they're going to make you pitch, don't you want to be decent at it? Don't you want to go out there and do well instead of maybe walking tons of batters because you never work on your pitching at all? He goes, yeah, I guess so. That kid ended up being a pitcher in college. It's just the way it goes. He got an offer to be a small-time catcher, like a small D3 or something. And then he got an offer to be he got a pretty substantial scholarship offer for like a good D2 school as a pitcher. So he decided to try his luck at pitching. So you just never know as a parent, understanding that you can't read the future. It's good to like expose them to all different stuff. And him as a catcher going out there as a pitcher helped his pitch calling, helped him understand what his pitchers were going through when he would catch them. And even if it's not a pitching situation, it's good body control for everyone. You learn a lot about yourself mentally and physically going out there and pitching. And especially physically, you learn just, oh man, here's how I control my body. Here's how I can get the ball down. There's just lots of stuff you learn being in that position that's good for you as a ball player. So especially as a 10, 11, 12, 13, even if you don't see your kid being a long-term pitcher, it doesn't matter. Let them go out there to the mound. They're going to learn a lot of lessons mentally and physically that will benefit them as a ball player in the long term. So hopefully today's video helped you as a coach or as a parent or as a player. You should want to sign up to learn to pitch when you're a young player. It's going to benefit you mentally and physically from body control, from a game perspective, from a situational understanding perspective. It's going to benefit your team because if you can give your team a couple good innings with just competent throwing strikes kind of innings, it's going to take pressure off everyone. And then the best pitchers can be more well rested and pitch when it really matters and help your team win. And you can go back to shortstop, right? And then as a coach, the more competent pitchers that you work with and you train in the offseason, and this is up to you, you've got to give them time, you got to work with them and help develop them. If you have lots and lots of competent pitchers, when the injury bug bites or they have family conflicts or a kid implodes and now you're suddenly down 2 really good pitchers, right off the bat, you still have enough competent arms to go out there and throw strikes, eat innings, and you can still battle and try to pound in some runs and win games that way. I really implore every youth team, 10 pitchers per team. Even if your roster is 11 or 12, 10 kids that can go out there and feel competent pitching. If you do that, you're going to have a good season. Everyone is going to get better and have a good time out there on the field. Thanks again for watching. If you're new here, definitely subscribe to the channel below. You can find my books, online courses, all these resources for baseball families. And I'll see you here in the next video.